You're shopping for your first home. It seems so overwhelming. So, what we want to do here is break down and demystify the process. I'm Ellen Mitchell, your heels on the ground in the Miami Fort Lauderdale area. And on this channel, we talk about everything: probate, guardianship, senior relocation, and today, first-time home buyers. I'm sitting here with my son and colleague, Kevin Bethel. Kevin works with a lot of buyers, and we find that younger buyers have buyer reluctance. What do I mean? They're comfortable renting, and they don't have that same dream of home ownership the way that my generation did. So Kevin, let's get into it. What do you see as some of the reasons that your generation has concerns about buying, and can you break it down for them so that it's not such a big, scary thing?
Well, I wouldn't say they don't have the dream to buy it. I think it feels more out of reach than your generation did. With the wages and cost of a home, it seems a lot harder for people. So I think, step one is always for us to introduce them to a lender so that they could speak to someone and really learn how much they would be renting for versus how much they would be buying a house for. And something that, Brad, who's a lender we work with a lot, talks about is over the first 4 years of owning a home, the home is likely appreciating every year. Whereas when you're renting, that money goes nowhere. So, but within the first few years of owning, you already have equity versus just paying rent right away.
That's great. And so when they meet with a lender, Brad or somebody else, what is it that they walk away from? What's the value of them meeting with that lender or mortgage broker?
So the lender's just there to really show them what they can afford, depending on how much they have saved up, what their credit score is, and how many debts they have in their credit score, just to see what they could qualify for, whether it would be a single family home that's $300,000, $400,000, because you're really qualifying for the payment, whether it's $3,500 a month, $4,000 a month. And, if you're single, married, or going to move in with somebody, that can really determine all of those factors. Or even if you're a first responder or first-time home buyer, first-time home buyer is what we're talking about. There's different programs that could help them as well.
Great. And if they contact you, you would be able to discuss some of those different programs.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say you go out, you have the pre-approval, the written pre-approval by the lender, and then the next step is going out and looking at properties.
Yeah. Yeah, so we would get them set up on a search, go look at properties, and then pretty quickly people figure out, what they like, what they don't like. And, you want to have the pre-approval ready by the time you see your first house, because you never know if it's the first showing you do, you want to put an offer, or if it's the 20th showing you do. But you want to make sure either way you're ready to go.
Okay, so when you put in the offer, there are a lot of forms that are required for that. So you're negotiating the sales contract. We're also required prior to 1978, a building prior to 1978, to put in a lead-based paint addendum. Now we've got the flood disclosure that is required. So a lot of documents. It's important that the agent that you're working with knows the updated requirements. They're changing all of the time. So you've gone back and forth, you've negotiated, and now you have a fully executed contract, which means the fully executed contract is the date that the last person initials. So the last person initials on Sunday the 5th, and then what do they go into first?
First, you would get ready to submit your deposit. So you usually have 3 days to submit your first deposit. Schedule the inspection, which has to happen usually within the first 7 days, and apply for the loan, which by the time you have your pre-approval, you probably have almost everything submitted to the lender, but sometimes they need extra supporting documents, W-2, income verification, and stuff like that.
Right, and we have a cautionary tale. There was a client that chose not to use a realtor, and they chose not to use their own attorney. They actually sent the deposit to the seller directly. And at the time of closing, they sent the money to the seller directly. It was a nightmare, and we can talk about that on a separate episode. But the money should be sent to an attorney or title company's escrow account. In some states, a real estate company's escrow account. but never directly to the realtor and definitely never to the seller. So when we're negotiating the price, how do we come up with the price? I know some people say, well, I believe that we're supposed to offer 10% less than the list price. But how do you actually come up with an offer price?
I mean, the best way is to see comparable market sales in the neighborhood, in the community, in the development. Sometimes people are listed way too high, and it's okay to come in $50,000 lower if they're, listed ridiculously high. And sometimes the listing agent will have the seller, kind of like we do, list pretty much to sell, which in that case, if you want to get the house, you're not, if it's listed at 450, you're not offering 390 in hopes you get it. You're offering 440, 445, something comparative to where the seller knows that you're being serious. So it really depends on how it's listed.
I agree. So you would pull the closed sales and you're going to make the offer on what comparable homes have sold for in the area. And that's how you're going to base your offer. Also, if they're getting financing, the property is going to have to be appraised. And the bank is going to come out. And if you're under contract for $550,000 and the properties in the area are selling for $400,000,
Right.
It's not going to appraise. And that's going to create a whole host of other problems.
Oh, and sometimes, the listing agent will say the seller's very motivated. And then those cases, you can maybe come in a little bit more aggressively because the house could have been listed for 6 months, or they need to move right away, or they're going through some emergency. And in those cases, sometimes you can maybe throw out a little bit, a lower offer than you would if it was not a motivated seller.
All right, so we've gone through the pre-approval, finding a home, negotiating, the inspections, the appraisal, and once we get the home inspections, then we're going to send that to the insurance agent. And we've had deals almost blow up at that time frame. So can you let people know what is important for a house to be insurable?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is the 4-point. The 4-point would be the roof, the hot water heater, I think AC, and plumbing. And those are the things that could, if your hot water heater is broken or if your roof has a leak, something like that would make it not insurable and not financeable, and automatically would be a red flag for insurance. So those are the things that if they come up an inspection, you need to either have the seller fix or get a credit for the buyer to fix it. But usually the seller would need to fix it by closing because some things are, non-negotiables for the insurance companies.
Right, and the roof should have 5 years of useful life left. Sometimes the seller can do a repair to the roof and bring it into that 5 years of useful life. Sometimes they can't. And an option is often that either the buyer or seller will sign a contract with the roofing company and the roof will be replaced after closing. The insurance company will go back within 30 days to check, and then that property is financeable. Another thing we see a lot of is the electrical panels. The electrical panels are now on like the bad panel list, and so they're not insurable, and we just need to go in and have an electrician upgrade the panel, bring it into compliance, and now that property...
Or get rid of any double taps or wrongly wired things.
Right, but it's really important to work with an agent that has seen around the corners and knows how to do these things, because you don't want to blow up a deal when all you need to do is get the electrical panel upgraded. We want to make sure that we're keeping the deal together as long as it's still good for the buyer and good for the seller, so we can be creative in finding solutions. So now let's say we figured out the insurance, the buyer gets approved for their mortgage, and what's next?
Get approved for their mortgage, and then it would be doing a final walkthrough. Make sure that everything is still in the house is still standing, and then scheduling closing and getting to the closing table.
Exactly, and the house is still standing is a pretty low bar. The house is supposed to be in the same condition it was when it went under contract. So if the home was sold with all of the appliances and we go to the walkthrough and all of the appliances are missing, we have a problem. And I've had that happen before. The seller would either need to bring the appliances back, or the seller and buyer would negotiate a credit. The seller is supposed to keep the home in the same condition as it was when it went under contract. If they've allowed the pool to get green or the grass to get overgrown, they're going to have to give the buyer a credit to take care of those things. And they need to leave the utilities on for closing so that we can do that final walkthrough.
Yep.
And then after the final walkthrough, assuming everything goes well, we go to the closing and all of the documents are signed. The buyer is given the keys, puts the utilities in their name, and we have a new happy buyer. Our relationship with them does not end at the time of closing. We're always here to be a resource for them, whether they need a plumber, electrician, a handyman, whatever it is. They want to know what the closest yoga studio is. We're really selling a lifestyle and a relationship for life. So thank you so much for doing this with me. It was a lot of fun. And if you have any questions, comments, ideas for future episodes, please like and subscribe below. I do read all of the comments. It is always my intention to improve our content and give you information that will be helpful and that will really serve you.